There's no government, no police, no army, no TV, no radio, no electricity. You're the first uninfected person we've seen in 6 days.
And welcome to the Mind Your Movies podcast. We are uninfected.
For
I
now.
am Ryan. Yeah, for now. I am Ryan.
I'm Shane.
And today we're talking about infections. We're talking about 28 days later and 28 weeks later to prepare for the upcoming 28 years later.
Yeah,
Skipping
this is
over
actually,
months.
yeah, little known fact, this is a sequel to Clockwork Orange. What
That's
happens when you replace Alex DeLarge with a very rageful monkey?
yes, that's right. That's right. Um yeah, we skip over months here. We don't have any 28 months later. I wonder if they'll get back to that at some point.
Oh, prequel 28 months later.
Yeah.
I don't know. They kind of 28 weeks later kind of does some things that make it difficult to make a sequel, I feel like. That's
Yeah.
why 28 years is nice because there's such a big gap in time.
Yeah.
But yeah, these are, I mean, 28 Days Later, absolute classic, written by Alex Garland, directed by Danny Boyle. Uh, Iconic movie. 28 Weeks Later is a movie. So yeah, we're gonna talk about both. We're gonna get into spoilers for both. So hope go out, watch the movies, if you can, if you can find them somewhere. Yeah, we thought this would be a fun episode to do in anticipation of 28 years later coming out in a couple weeks.
Yeah. Yeah. One kind of annoying thing about 28 Days Later is that it has not been easily available online, like digitally, for a while. Although it is, I think this issue is now resolved. I think you can rent it somewhere nowadays.
I but you watch yeah, you watched a DVD. I watched
Yeah.
a Blu-ray that I've had since I did not buy it for like $100. I bought it for probably like $5 to $10 back like a decade ago. But but I was wondering like if the music was the issue, like because there is some pretty good the soundtrack is very good and there's I don't know, there's like Godspeed You Black Emperor song toward the beginning. There and then there's like the theme that's in both movies, so I assume it's not that. But maybe one of the songs in the original they were having issues with the rights to that or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, it could be. I mean, the music in it is iconic, so I could see them not wanting to like change the music at all for a digital release, right? That would, I think, be a big downfall for the movie if they did that. So I don't know. I mean, I'm glad that they got it all resolved, like kind of just in time to essentially make the 28 years later a big theatrical thing. Because if it was still really hard to get 28 days later, you'd just have less people hyping themselves up by watching it and everything, right? So
Right. But yeah. Do you want to do a little, should we do a little basics behind 28 Days Later, maybe?
yeah, well, it's kind of a zombie movie.
Yeah.
We learn about at the opening scene. We have a really interesting opening scene with some animal rights folks like breaking into a monkey testing facility where they're trying to induce rage into monkeys. It seems with like these monitors that have like wartime images on them and all sorts of social dismay and all that. Uh, and apparently it's working because all shit goes to hell and the monkey attacks people and then the people attack people. And clearly the infection has kind of rapidly started. And that's kind of our opening scene. We haven't even met our main characters yet. And then we get 28 days later kind of on the screen. It's almost like a subtitle. It's kind of in the corner, definitely not like front and center.
It is telling us that it's literally 28 days after the monkey thing.
Right. It's
Yeah.
like it's interesting because it's also the title screen, but
Yeah.
it's really not kind of a title screen because it's a very
Yeah.
uh very what do you call it? Like subtle title.
Yeah.
Um and then
And
we
then
get
there's
Killian Murphy, full frontal.
Dong out in the hospital bed in a coma. Just woke up from a coma. Yeah, I did forget about the dong in this movie. But very iconic scenes of Cillian Murphy walking around. The hospital is all abandoned. He finds a Pepsi, which is there's a lot of Pepsi in this movie. I don't know if Pepsi paid for that. It did remind me of World War Z. Do you remember in World War Z the very iconically bad
Product
uh
placement.
product placement? Yeah, so Pepsi and Brad Pitt like cracks one open, he takes a nice
Yeah.
sip. Yeah, that kind of reminded me of that.
Yeah,
But
what's up with Pepsi during the apocalypse?
Yeah, but Pepsi apparently is so like radioactive it just survives any apocalypse. It'll never go bad. It's all chemicals. Um, but yeah, they so he's walking around the hospital, he walks around London. No one is around. They shot it sort of at sunrise and they shut down like parts of London. It's pretty cool how to see it so just completely abandoned. It's pretty surreal imagery. And that part, this part of the movie, I think, is like maybe the most iconic part that people remember.
Yeah, I would agree. I think it's really, I mean, it's amazing they were able to get so many iconic like landmarks in these shots too, right? Like they have Big Ben and whatever that bridge is, and
I think it's London Bridge.
whoa. um, I thought that fell down. Just that was a joke. Um, but they get all these like iconic things in these shots, and there's like no cars, there's no corpses, which is a really interesting
Oh
decision.
yeah.
Um, and it's completely desolate, right? Again, there's very few cars. At one point, he like goes up to a car and he accidentally touches it, and the alarm goes off. But really, there's like very little going on. There's one point where there's like a tipped over um two-decker bus, and I was watching the commentary. In the commentary they said that they were allowed to do that if they could do it in like under 15 minutes or something, like set up
Wow.
to deconstruct. So they set it up, filmed, and deconstructed that collapsed or tipped over bus in like 15 minutes,
Wow.
which is
Jeez.
crazy,
That's
crazy.
insane.
um
Yeah, they had
and
very little time for all those shots, right?
Yeah, which they said in the commentary is part of their decision to use kind of controversial decision maybe, but to use digital cameras here, which is of course very representative. I mean, you watch this on Blu-ray, and you probably had just the same experience for most of the movie as me watching on DVD
Yeah.
because of that. Um,
Yeah, but it gives it a very unique look. And this is like post like Dogma 95. So like people had started using digital cameras a little bit, but they look pretty crummy. And clear like it just gives the movie a unique look. Oh, it almost looks like news footage or something. I think it kind of
right,
contributes to the realism like of it all. Like it feels more real because of the digital cameras. Um, but I also appreciated like the film is very well shot, a lot of like really nice compositions. There's some nice camera movements. So I feel like as digital cinematography like got more popular, people just used it to be cheap and quick. But I feel like for 28 Days Later, it's like a really strong aesthetic choice, and they weren't using it as like a handicap or just a way to shoot everything quick and just get it done. You know, it was very well thought out and well planned. Yeah.
right. And one of the things it did is it did let them shoot stuff quick, but in a very intentional way of like these street shots that
Yeah.
they could close down the street for like 90 minutes. So they had very little time to set up and film, right?
Mhm.
And they really use it to great advantage. And you're right, I think it does like kind of give off this kind of realistic vibe, and almost like you said, news footage. Almost like at times there's like these really high up shots from tops of buildings and roofs that almost look like surveillancy, right? Because even as you watch Killian Murphy and his scrubs walk around, it's like so blurry and you can really not even tell who he is, and it looks like CCTV camera, right? It's very kind of eerie in that way.
Yeah, definitely. And there are a lot of nice wide shots of the city too, and they'll just be like birds flying, and it really looks complete. It's you believe that London is actually desolate, which
Right.
is pretty impressive.
Yeah, and there's no, it's amazing that even in these wide shots there's no movement, there's no there's no cars, nothing like that. There's
Yeah.
actually, it was funny in the commentary, there's one part where uh I think it was I forget if it was Alex Garland or Danny Boyle that was saying, trying to point out a car in one of the shots and couldn't find it. But he was like, I know there's one in here that's like driving by and they accidentally got it. And
Uh,
they couldn't find it. So I guess, I mean, does it really matter if you got one if
yeah,
if
right.
the person that made the movie can't find it? Um, but yeah, so a very, I think, very impressive cinematography and very iconic and very influential. Like if we look at The Walking Dead, which of course was based on comics, but those comics actually came out the year after this, anyways. Um, the opening shots of like the Walking Dead TV show are very reminiscent of these opening shots in 28 Days Later.
Yeah, definitely. Uh, yeah,
And
very.
then, anyways, so we're rambling about the stuff, but I mean, I think this is like some of the best parts of the movie, uh,
Oh
just in
yeah,
terms of being able to like have all this stuff on full display, and then the music too. We get some of the iconic music while he's walking around the city too, which is
yeah,
great.
yeah. That kind of like puts it over, makes it so iconic too. The music
Yeah,
and everything. Yeah, just very well put together.
yeah. And he's walking around, he gets into a church and he sees some creepy looking people. He's not really sure what's going on, and then a priest attacks him. Ironically, the first person that he assaults in this movie is a priest, just saying.
Yeah, and there's all the dead bodies in the church as well.
Yes.
So people clearly tried to come to the church for refuge, and they all got fucked up.
Yeah, they did not find salvation.
Well, it's interesting because there are all the dead bodies, but I get like how does the rage thing work? Because it seems like everyone who gets attacked, they get infected. Maybe some people get killed before they can get it infected.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think that um
I mean,
and I
that would
think
be why there was no dead bodies outside, right? Because in theory, they're all like rage virus zombies. That's why they're not dead
yeah.
bodies out.
Well, it's a really interesting choice to have no dead bodies and really very little gore and very little
Well,
represent in the opening, like when he's walking around the
yes,
city.
yes, yes. Because he it does make him he doesn't know what's going on,
Right,
so
right,
it's just more confusing for him.
right, and of course there's a lot of gore in this movie, but in those opening shots, there's very little recognizable signs of what is really happening, right?
Yeah,
And there's this moment actually that he gets to that like uh, kind of poster board of missing persons posters and was kind of clearly wondering what the hell is going on, right?
yeah.
And very kind of very harrowing shot of him and just all those posters, and they're so blurry from the footage and in the wide shot that it takes there. Oh,
I, th-
really
I,
creepy.
yeah, very creepy. And I'm thinking the church, maybe all those people killed themselves.
Oh, maybe to prevent
Yeah, because they didn't want. I mean, same thing later on. We see Jim's parents that killed themselves in their house. So maybe that's the implication with all the dead bodies in the church.
yeah. Well, and then interesting, the priest didn't,
Yeah,
you
I
know,
guess so.
but anyways, I was
Yeah.
speculating about this church, but it is really interesting because again, like we just you would expect, and often in these apocalyptic movies, you see like cars piled up on the freeway, and you see like bodies strewn about and everything, and they very intentionally chose to not do that, and that's an interesting decision that almost maybe takes away from the realism of the moment.
I
Like you,
don't think so because they'd be zombies.
but so all the zombies didn't kill anyone in the street though, right? Like
Well, then they kill someone and then they turn into a zombie. Everyone they kill turns into a zombie.
wait, but I don't know if that's true. I think I don't know. See, it's a little confusing in this because and this is actually so like it's not it is zombies, but it's also kind of not because I thought that you only turned into a zombie if you got like the blood in you somehow, right?
Mm.
So if
Or
they
saliva, or
or
yeah,
saliva, yeah, something like bodily fluid, right?
yeah.
So I guess yeah, I mean if you're gonna get killed, you're gonna get blood in you, I guess. They're gonna bite you and stuff, but
Yeah.
I don't know. It's very
It seems
yeah.
yeah, they attack a lot with the teeth. If they bite you, that you're screwed. Yeah, it's kind of different from a traditional undead zombie that has just kind of magically become undead, and then they can like eat your brains, and then you just die. You're just dead. You
Right.
don't necessarily turn into a zombie. Some,
Right.
but this is
Yeah.
sort of because it's an infection, it spreads. So I think that's why there's not all the dead bodies around.
Yeah. But also it's interesting because since it's an infection, if the body is dead, with the zombie movie, the body's being dead is kind of a necessity. But in this, people can get infected and not die and turn into a zombie.
Right.
So there's
So yeah,
some
what would happen if
interesting
the
nuance.
if the zombie like kills you so bad that you can't come back? Then you wouldn't turn into one, I guess, if it like
Right.
ripped your head off, you know?
Yeah, like if they killed you, right? If they killed you, then you're dead, right? But if they infect you, then you're a zombie.
Right. But the infection is so quick, like we see with, I
Yeah.
mean, we're way farther than we are in the plot, but Brendan Gleeson like gets the blood in his eye and he turns into a zombie like within 30
Yeah,
seconds, maybe.
right.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's really interesting the choice to. I mean, this is kind of the start of the zombie renaissance of the mid 2000s. I mean, it's even partly responsible for like bringing back George Romero's zombie movies in this time era and
Yeah.
everything.
And fast zombies.
Yeah, of course.
One of
Right.
the
Yeah,
first, right?
right. We talked it might be the first, right? We talked about their impact in the Dawn of the Dead remake not too long ago. In our remakes episode, but and this might be the first one where that happens. And it's again, it's kind of an interesting decision, and I wonder if it's if part of that decision of making them run was because Danny Boyle uh, didn't actually want this to be a zombie movie. He like didn't call it a zombie movie, right?
Yeah.
Um,
And
and so yeah, so I
it's
wonder if
very
like
different from a zombie movie. It's an
yeah,
infection and it's rage, so it makes sense. If you're rageful, you're going to be running around.
exactly. And so it's kind of like it makes sense for this to not really be zombies in a way because they this is totally different than what zombies were before this. But then afterwards, zombies pick up on these traits in cinema, right?
Right.
And
Yeah.
pop culture. Which is really interesting. An interesting kind of and I mean honestly, like George Romero, it was a very similar way with Night of the Living Dead. George Romero called them ghouls in the movie and really wanted to dissociate it from like Haitian zombie lore. Um, Even though it was very influenced by that. But then the term zombie picks up and it becomes the cinema's zombies, right, of the time.
Yeah. Right.
Um, so in a way, this is I feel like very reminiscent of some of the influential pieces that that movie had.
Yeah. Um, but yeah, after this church scene, he gets Jim gets saved by Naomi Harris, Selena, played by Naomi Harris, and Noah Huntley, who plays I forget the guy's name, but he doesn't last
Yeah,
that long anyway. So,
yeah,
but they save him. They throw Molotov cocktails at the zombies, which is cool, pretty cool images of like people on fire. Um, and then a gas station explodes, which is cool.
yeah.
Yeah.
And they did. I was surprised they didn't say much in the commentary. I kind of thought they would say a little bit about how they did that or whatever, but I'm kind of left to assume they just blew up a gas station.
Yeah, I don't know. I have no idea. It was pretty believable.
Yeah,
It looked real.
yeah, crazy.
But yeah, so
Um,
now Jim's sort of realizing what's going on. There are these cool shots of the yellow sky. Like I don't know if it's sunrise or if it I don't know. It looks like apocalyptic. There's one shot in particular I'm thinking of where the sky is like completely yellow.
yeah,
And I don't know if part of that is the digital camera also creating that effect at sunrise, something like that.
yeah.
Um,
It could be. It also could be the fact that, like we mentioned already, they had to film kind of sunrise and sunset, right? Because that's when the streets are most desolate and they could more easily shut them down and stuff. So I think that helps to give it that eerie kind of apocalyptic mood, though, and I think is also influential in things like uh, even like video games about zombies, like Dying Light and things like that, where they really just every time you look at the sky, it's just yellow, right? Like,
mm,
so it's yeah, kind of an interesting consequence of that.
yeah. But yeah, they go. I mean, well, whatever. Noah Huntley gets bit. Selena kills him like right away.
Brutal.
Yeah,
Yeah,
like by hand, or does she have like a machete or
I
something?
think a
Right?
machete. Yeah, she
Yeah, and
just keeps whacking him with the machete.
yeah, she just kills him. Which you gotta do what you gotta do. She's very no nonsense, like, and that's how she's like survived in this. And she probably had some of that in her personality before, but the zombie apocalypse probably made like hardened her even more to where she's like, got to do what you got to do to survive. And it's kind of different from Jim. Jim is a little bit more innocent, I guess, in a way. Like when they meet Brendan Gleeson, like at first, I think Selena asks him what he thinks, and he's like, "Oh, they seem like good people." And she's like, "Who cares if they're good people? Are they gonna help us survive? Like that's what matters."
Yeah,
Um, yeah, so it shows how this sort of uh anarchy of the apocalypse has like turned people, has sort of made people, I don't know,
Yeah, kind of uh
sur
hardened.
yeah, hardened people, and like survival is the only thing that matters really. Whereas
Right.
Jim still has some of his compassion and stuff like that from society before the apocalypse, I guess.
Yeah, in a way, he's kind of the child like thrown into the midst, right? Like he's not
Yeah.
literally a child, which is good, both because he's a much better actor than a child would have been in this, but also he has like adult abilities, especially later in the movie. But he really is just thrown into this kind of right in the middle.
Yeah, it's kind of like where he's sort of the audience surrogate, sort of like the Matrix with Neo, and Neo is learning all this stuff as we're learning it. And so we're sort of in the main character's shoes in that way.
Right.
So that definitely works for this.
Yeah, very powerful storytelling in that way.
Yeah.
Um, but then so they yeah, so he gets bit. This is they've gone to Jim's house, right? Because Jim didn't really believe that his parents could be dead. So they go to his house with him, and that's when the other guy dies. And then he and Selena start
Oh yeah.
kind of wandering, and they end up seeing some blinking lights in a big like high-rise tower. So they make their way there, and they meet um, Brendan Gleeson and the his
His
daughter
daughter.
in the
Yeah.
movie, who's and they are Frank and Helen in the movie, um,
Yeah.
and
And Brendan Gleeson's awesome. He's just
yeah,
such a great actor. He can do it like he can do anything. He's amazing. Anytime I see him, I'm like, yes, Brendan Gleeson's in this movie. This is gonna be great. He never lets me down.
yeah, and his character here is really interest. It's an interesting change of pace, kind of from Selena being that hardened person because he really isn't too much like that, right? Like he's kind of optimistic um I mean they're even like calling for other people to come, right, with the lights and everything.
Yeah.
Um and they realize or they tell Jim and Selena that they don't have water, right? They're running out of water. They've got these buckets on the roof. Incredible.
Yeah.
They I mean it's 1,000 buckets. They talked in the
Wow.
commentary about at first they had 100 buckets up there, and then they had like the shots and they were like this looks kind of silly, like we got to get more buckets. And so they told their like set people, can you get us 1,000 buckets by 2 o'clock or whatever it was, right? And so somehow they do that, but they ended up with like apparently if you pause at certain times, I didn't bother doing this, but they were talking about some of the buckets are like laundry hampers where like it's just full of holes and
I
stuff.
noticed that. I noticed the laundry hamper, and I was like, I don't know if that's gonna help you that much, but okay.
Yeah. And so they said this was a really funny kind of consequence of trying to get 1,000 buckets so quickly, but also it was just kind of a funny thing to leave in. So,
Yeah.
uh,
And it's kind of
um,
believable that it's gonna be hard to find that many buckets.
oh my God, you got to put whatever you can out there, right? I mean,
Yeah.
uh, and so,
But
so
yeah, Brendan Gleeson's character Frank has obviously he has his daughter, and he kind of has hope, and he knows this broadcast is playing, saying that the military is at a certain location. Come to us. We have they say salvation, literally, I believe, in the broadcast. So he has that hope that is kind of keeping him going, and he's pretty like jovial, all things considered. And
yeah,
he's also very effective. Like when they first get there, he's in like his body armor with the shield, and he like kills a couple zombies to let them come in. So he's effective, but he still has his like kindness to him, which is nice. And
right.
he's funny, which is nice for this movie because once he leaves the movie, it becomes extremely, 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 extremely bleak.
Dark. Yeah, yeah. It's a very, very
To the
dark
point where I'm like,
final
oh yeah,
act.
this is why I haven't rewatched the movie in like 10 years, because this is the most depressing shit ever. I don't want to see this.
Mm,
But this beginning part of the movie is just awesome.
yeah.
And I think Frank being such a fun character helps. There's also whatever. I mean, they realize they can't stay there. They're gonna go. He has a car, kind of like an old.
It's like a taxi.
I guess,
He's,
is it a taxi?
yeah, he starts the meter when they get in it, and he jokes about
Oh,
he's like, uh He makes some joke when he starts the meter and they're about to drive, and he's
So
full of
he's
these kind of funny jokes
so
at
he's like
times.
he's a cab driver
Yeah, I guess
before.
so.
Wow, okay. I didn't even didn't put that together. But yeah, but they drive out, they find a supermarket and that's a fun section, which is kind of a common trope in zombie movies. I know it's in the original Dawn of the Dead. I don't know if there was any other movies in this, but I feel like there's always like the shopping spree scene in a zombie movie where there's a store and
Yeah,
it's totally abandoned and they're like, grab everything you can. Yeah, and it's actually everyone can be happy for a moment, which is
yeah,
obviously setting you up for them to all be brutally killed probably, but
yeah. I think that this might be this was kind of an homage back to Dawn of the Dead, the original, and then from there, and then the Dawn of the Dead remake, only 2 years later, it kind of gets picked up as just kind of a trope at this point. But it was
yeah,
originally, they were kind of just doing it as a nod back to George Romero,
yeah,
which I mean, it's kind of cool that they do that, and then it really does take off, right? Like every movie with zombies now pretty much does that, which is cool.
yeah. Because there's something of a like fantasy to that of like
Oh
you
yeah,
still have access to the infrastructure of society, but you're
yeah,
able, it's all, no one else is around. So it's all for you. It's kind of, yeah.
right. There's also a really cool moment just before the grocery store where they're stuck in a tunnel, and
Oh, yeah.
they're trying to do it. They're trying to change the tire. First of all,
Yeah.
most stressful tire change in cinema, maybe.
Yeah. Whoever said not to go in the tunnel, I think it was Jim or
Yeah.
Selena, one of them, they should have listened to them. That tunnel
Oh
was,
my
that was a
god.
bad idea.
Yeah. Well, and then of course it doesn't help that Frank just drives over this pile of cars.
Yeah. Well, you're,
Crazy.
yeah. Yeah.
But he's got so they have the flat tire, and then the really cool thing is there's like an army of rats that just goes through the tunnel. And at
Yeah.
first it's like, oh shoot, are they also infected? But no, they're just running from the infected. So then they
Yeah.
really have to speed up their changing of the tire, and they make
Yeah.
it out in time.
Yeah. And also his daughter changes the tire. So she's capable, shows that she is capable of kind of surviving. She's not
Yeah.
just kind of a hanger on who's not going to help.
Hmm. Um, and then they go and get some they get some more gas, and then eventually they go and they sleep at some old ruins, which is kind of another nice, just
Yeah.
kind of a dreamy place to go, and almost like a step away from the apocalypse. It's really neat.
Yeah. 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 And the green grass is just so vibrant, like stands out from the city setting that we were in the beginning. And yeah, some really nice cinematography here too. And you get that, I don't know, it feels very idyllic, kind of the calm before the storm, I guess.
Yeah. And then
Yeah.
of course also here Jim actually has this dream of being left alone
Yeah.
and abandoned, and
Uh,
it's really it's impactful, I think, to his character, certainly.
yeah, definitely. 100%. And Selena kisses him on the cheek.
Ooh.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yep. Yep. So
Yeah.
these are some of the nice scenes before it all goes to shit. So so far in the movie, I feel like this is, I don't know. I feel like it's really great. Would have high rewatchability value. Um, but yeah, once we get into the sort of third act of the movie, it takes a bit of a turn.
Yeah.
But yeah, we'll get into that, I guess.
I would say also up to here, and I think it continues, but it's also just really well paced, right? Like we're talking about these kind of like idyllic scenes of the power fantasy of just rummaging through the grocery store and then sleeping at this wonderful place. And there is like a zombie attack in the middle. And it's just like everything is very, very intentionally thought out and well paced, and just very uh good props to them making this.
Yeah, and they'll have a scene of people just talking and a little character development, and then in between they'll have a zombie attack, or Jim has to kill the kid at the gas station, or they come at the tunnel. Like they balance the character development with the action pretty well.
Right. And of course, also during this, speaking of character development, Frank kind of becomes a like fatherly figure to Jim, so much so that when he wakes him up from the nightmare, Jim says, "Thanks, Dad." And
Yeah,
kind of a funny little thing, but also it shows, he gets the kiss on the cheek from Selena. He accidentally calls this guy Dad, right? They're all bonding, right?
yeah,
Nothing could go wrong.
yeah. I assumed he was kind of joking when he called him dad, but still, it still applies.
Yeah. Either, yeah, I think either way it shows they're getting close, whether he said that,
Yes.
yeah, right, in jest or not. But
Yes. But yeah, every there's this kind of a nice little family unit being formed, and nothing could break them up.
and now Frank dies.
Ah, Jesus.
This is, yeah, so they get to the place where the broadcast is coming from, and Frank gets mad because no one's there, right? It's like a military outpost, and it's there's actually dead bodies here, right? Um,
Yeah.
which is an interesting difference from pretty much anywhere else that we've been in the movie, right?
Mm.
There's actual dead bodies that aren't actually alive. Whatever. They're not
Yeah.
zombies.
Yeah, yeah.
And he kicks a thing, and kind of comically, a dead body that's on top of that thing drops a drop of blood into his eye.
I don't know if he kicks it. Does he kick it?
I think he's like either kicking it or he's
I
like,
think no, no, no. I think I don't know if I don't think he kicks it.
oh, maybe
But
not.
there's a bird on it. It's a crow. A crow is like picking at
Oh, is
a dead
that?
body.
Oh,
And then he's looking at it, and then for some reason he goes right under it. Forget exactly why,
mm,
but he's sort of distraught because he's like he had this was his one hope for salvation, and now it's
right.
fucked. So he's kind of out of sorts. And then the I remember this definitely from when I first saw the movie of the blood, the camera like following the blood right into his eye, and then almost immediately he's like I forget the daughter's name, but he's like, "Daughter, I love you." And then he starts freaking out, and he starts turning into a rage zombie right within like 15 seconds.
Yeah. And Jim's trying to make the hard decision to kill him because he knows that
Yep.
he has to, and Selena's telling him to. And then, duh, 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 like
Yeah.
5, 6, 7, 8, 9 gunshots or something. It's crazy.
Yeah.
And a military guy from the corner just unloads into him.
Yes. And then that now we've realized that there are some military people around, and this is where the movie just,
Yeah. It was, I will say, a big red flag, the amount of shots they put into Frank. It's like they,
he's a zombie.
yeah, but like, jeez, like I think a shot or two was good, I mean, but
I don't agree.
all right, fine. But I'm
I think
sticking with it.
that's no, I think that's you're just looking for things at that point. They're
I
zombies. You
don't
gotta
know.
unload on them, kill them. You
I
gotta make
think,
sure they're dead.
yeah, I mean, I don't know. I think, geez, it felt like they just kept shooting the guy, but
They did maybe shoot him a couple times when he was like already down on the ground. Maybe
it's
you're
like,
right. Maybe he was a little overeager. You could be right.
but
Do you remember which? Do they tell you which specific character it is? No,
no, they've got these. It's actually
the
really
masks on.
interesting. They've
Yeah,
got the uniforms, they got the mask on. You really can't tell them all apart. And then once you get to the compound, you start to kind of understand a little bit about some of the different characters. But
yeah. You're able to distinguish most of them.
yeah, um, and yeah, kind of crazy. They get to the compound, and we quickly start to learn that the military guys are pretty shitty people.
Bad
Um,
news.
yeah, and I don't know. There's a dinner scene that's kind of tense and somewhat interesting, but whatever.
Yeah, it's interesting. The guy's wearing like a pink apron. Like they kind of they
Emasculate him.
yeah, exactly. And they yeah, clearly a very horrible environment. I will say it's interesting, like this depiction of the military in comparison, like considering Alex Garland's last two movies have been, especially Warfare, obviously, was just about the military. Um, this is not a friendly depiction of the military at all. They're absolutely horrible. There's like one guy who's not a complete monster, and all the rest are completely awful people. And it is nice when we get to see them all murdered at the end. That was nice.
Yeah, it's interesting. So essentially, uh, to skip over a few things here is the military guys are shit, and they're essentially trying to like sexually assault Helen and Selena, and they're throwing Jim and the other good military guy out, and they're about to execute them. Jim gets away and unleashes the zombies. He sets off an alarm that's
Yeah.
calling all the zombies. Um,
And they yeah.
yeah, and
Manchester was on fire, so they say there's a lot of zombies around. So
right,
yeah.
and and then he starts picking them off one by one while letting the zombies kind of eviscerate them too. And this is
And
like an interesting moment where we like kind of root for the zombies here. I mean, we root for Jim, but
Yeah. But also Jim is so fueled by rage that he kills, I think it's like the absolute worst guy. I think like Mitchell was his name.
yeah, the main guy,
Uh
the main bad guy, I guess,
well,
right?
sort of. There's like the guy in charge. His let me just look up the names of the characters. I forget. Because the guy in charge is Major Henry West. But I think Mitchell is like kind of he seems like the biggest piece of shit in a way.
Mm,
Like he's kind of like the most awful of them all, I guess. And I think he's the one that like Jim comes in and he's beating the shit out of him. He gouges his eyes out and he's
yeah,
like covered in blood. And Selena thinks about killing him because she thinks he might be infected, but it turns out he's not. He's just just angry.
yeah, crazy. I mean, he really is like he is filled with rage, right?
Yeah.
Um, it, yeah. I mean, he hasn't fully succumbed to the. He's not literally infected, but
Yeah.
damn,
Yeah.
crazy.
He doesn't have the virus. It's just actual rage.
Yeah,
Uh, and that is very satisfying to see that guy get his eyes gouged out. I liked seeing that.
yeah. And then he goes and he and Selena are kissing right after, and his hands are
Yeah.
all over her face with those thumbs, those bloody
Mm,
thumbs he just gouged someone's eyes out with.
I guess so. Yeah. And
Uh,
then what's her the daughter, Brendan
yeah,
Gleeson's daughter, thinks that I think she like hits him with something or
yeah.
yeah, and like
Throws something at him or whatever. Yeah,
yeah, because she thinks he might be attacking Selena, but he's not.
yeah. And then there's
Well,
there's one cool scene with Helen also where she's like hiding behind a mirror and one
oh
of the
yeah.
zombies comes at her and he's like there's just an interesting moment where he looks at his own reflection and it's like is he intrigued by his
I,
reflection or is he looking for does he sense her back there or something?
it didn't seem to me like there was any recognition in the reflection. I think
Yeah.
that was sort of a sign of like they're not human at all. They're just like on this animalistic instinct because he doesn't like recognize himself at all. He doesn't like I feel like in some zombie movies they like oh they turn their head.
Yeah.
They start like ooh like recognizing themselves, but this guy's just got a dead stare in his face like looks like a I don't know, just a machine ready to kill kind of a thing.
Yeah, he's not what do they call it in Day of the Dead? Bub?
Yeah, Bub
Yeah,
in Day
Bub.
of the Dead. Yeah,
He's no Bub.
he's not self-aware. It seems
Yeah.
like. Yeah, but yeah, I mean, basically all the also the military guys are keeping a zombie tied up, um,
Right.
or you know, an infected zombie, whatever. I guess we'll just call them zombies the whole time, just because that's the easiest thing to say, even though whatever you get into technicalities and all that. But then you know, Jim releases him and he starts attacking people too, which is kind of cool. Um, but yeah, they this part of the movie is so it's just the sexual assault part of it is so just disgusting and nasty and awful that it really brings them like I don't know. It's not that there's anything wrong with it from like a moral perspective or like the themes or anything. Like it is interesting and this is something that could happen in this type of situation. It's not that it's an issue with the movie, but it's just so hard to watch that it really takes down the movie's like replay value for me. Where I'm like, if I'm ever watching this movie, I'm like, oh boy, here comes the part where it's the worst of humanity for 30 minutes, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's definitely fair, right? I mean, I think it's a pretty grotesque piece of the movie, and
Hmm.
I certainly the least fun part to watch. You're not just
Yeah.
raiding a grocery store anymore, you know?
Yeah. And there is something to like the beginning of the movie where it's detached from reality enough that it even though it's, you know, thriller, it's kind of a fun in a way, but there's no way for this section of the movie to be fun at all. And that's kind of the point, right? I mean, these like, kind of like Alex Garland kind of exploring these like super dark, horrible aspects of humanity. But yeah, it's not an issue with the movie. It just makes me less eager to rewatch it, basically.
Yeah.
But
It- but it does end on a high note, kind
it
of.
does. Yeah, it's a
Um,
happy ending.
yeah, they
I
get
mean, yeah.
Jim was shot, but there's like a small scene where you see them bring him to a hospital or whatever and take care of him. And then it says 28 days later again.
It's pretty like unclear when it because
Yeah.
they're driving away and they get into a car crash and there's like a freeze frame and it seems like the movie's gonna end and then it says like 28 days later and they're like really quick shots of like things
Yeah, yeah.
happening. So you can't really tell what's going on. And then he just wakes up in a bed, sort
Right.
of like the beginning of the movie.
And he's at a farm. They're at like this nice green farm, and they say something like he's coming back, and then they pull out this giant sheet and they roll it out, and you see it says hello, and then this jet, it's a real jet too. They got a real jet for this, flies over, and I think she says Selena might say at the end, "You think he saw us this time?" and smiles, and then that's the end of the movie.
Yeah, that is a very nice ending. There is a chance that that is not real, I
Right.
think. There's
Yeah,
definitely a
Jim's
chance that
dead.
they die in the car crash and then this is sort of his vision of heaven or something like that, right?
Yeah. Oh yeah, with the freeze frame and everything, I think that's definitely possible.
Yeah. It's
It's
open to
in,
interpretation.
yeah. Now there's a really different ending to this movie. Well, first of all, there's an alternative theatrical ending that was aired first, or like shown to test audiences first,
Oh wow.
and they wanted a happier ending. But
Hmm.
essentially, in this one, uh, Helen and Selena bring Jim to a hospital after the car crash and try to heal him, but he dies, and then Helen says something like, "What now?" And then they're walking as like these automatic doors kind of close as they're walking down this long hallway in the hospital. And I think you hear Selena say something like, "We survive," or something. I don't know, something like that. It's I can see why people wouldn't like that one as much, right? And but then there's so that's fine, right? It's whatever. They showed that to test audiences. They didn't really like it as much, so they refilmed. And they had to do the new ending essentially once they got money from Fox. They had used up all their money. But there was a radically different ending that they did not go with that they initially wanted to, and they storyboarded out and on the DVD, and your Blu-ray might have this too, I'm sure, but they go through it. It's called the radical alternative ending. And it's just Danny Boyle and Alex Garland talking this through. One of them's reading the stage directions, one of them is talking the voices of the characters, and they're just showing you, and it kind of cinematically goes through the storyboard too. But essentially, they get to the blockade, and that's where it's different. Um,
Oh,
and I think you would like this ending a lot more because they get to the blockade. Jim gets infected by Frank gets infected by the thing,
yeah.
and Selena's telling Jim to kill him, kill him, kill him, and Jim swings, and then it cuts for a second, and it turns out that he just knocked him out. And Selena's kind of like, "We should kill him. We have to kill him." And they bring him to like this big building they see, and it's the animal testing facility, and which is kind of an interesting thing, right? So they bring him there, and they find assault rifles at the military thing too, whatever. Um, but there's a couple, at times there's some zombie attacks at the building, but they meet a guy there that's in like this closed off room. He's locked in, but there's like a almost like a prison thing where you can like put meal in, right? But he's like, "I can't let you in here. This is the only safe place in the whole world," or something, right? And they're like, "But your message said that salvation was here, whatever." And he was like, "Oh, the military people put those out. That wasn't me. Like, get out of here." And they're like, "Please, we have this guy infected." And eventually there's a few shots where like he won't help them. And then they introduce him to Helen, and they're like, "Her dad is infected, blah, blah." And then he's like, "Fine. The only way to do it is a full body blood transfusion. The infection lives in the blood." And so they have to somehow do a full body blood transfusion. And and which also in the
Is
while they're doing this in the special features, one of them says, "This is essentially why we didn't do this, because we figured nobody would believe that a tiny
yeah.
drop of blood put into your eye could infect you so quickly, and that you could somehow bleach out your whole system by a blood transfusion."
Right.
So I understand why they went away from this, but the idea is essentially there's this zombie attack happening while they're trying to do a blood transfusion. They figured out that Jim is the same blood type, so Jim is on the table and they're blood transfusing to him, but they have to put Frank's blood into him.
Whoa.
So he's like sacrificing himself for Frank. And
Oh.
then and then it cuts to Helen Selena and Frank, who's now healed, walking into that closed off room. The guy's finally letting them in, and then closes it behind them. And then it cuts to a shot of Jim at the table, very similar to like the monkey shot at the beginning, where he's like induced by rage and is like freaking out on the table and stuff. And there's those
Mm.
monitors, those same monitors as the beginning. So kind of a really cool, very different way to end this movie that clearly wasn't like fully developed, but it would have been really neat to see them kind of um, go down that path.
That could have been cool. That definitely could have been cool. I don't know how I feel about the full body blood transfusion and Jim
Exactly.
sacrificing himself. I don't know about all that stuff, but I like the idea of it. And I
Yeah.
like the idea of not having to deal with these military guys.
Yeah. The military guys here, they also mentioned are kind of a throw. They say also a nod to Romero's Day of the Dead, which is there's some pretty abusive
Yeah.
military guys in that one, and
Yeah.
so they have those kind of two very contrasting like callbacks to Romero with the grocery store trip, and the most brutal, grotesque part of the movie that nobody wants to watch, right?
Yeah. Yeah, right. Yeah. Interesting. I had no idea about that. I know I watched both movies yesterday, so I kind of didn't have time to look at the special features that much, but
Yeah,
maybe that is on the Blu-ray. I'll have to check it out.
it's pretty cool to watch. I mean, I did just spoil it all for you, but
Well, yeah, that's
I
okay though.
but them explaining it's probably much better than me explaining it. So,
Yeah.
um, but yeah, I think so. I mean, that's the movie. I think it's a very interesting. It's a very well made movie, and it's just I like it. I like it.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah,
Some other things I noted. There are a couple of shots here where the rain just looks awesome. Like it
yeah,
almost looks like for however, I don't know how this happened, but it almost looks like the rain is like frozen in time kind of a thing, and it's very crisp. It's very cool effect. Some of these shots with the rain. So yeah, this movie, like the digital cinematography obviously is like low quality in a lot of ways, but I think they use it to such great effect. And clearly it was so well thought out and like it expresses a lot with the camera angles they choose and the shaky cam is not extreme to the point where it's like nauseating or where you can't tell what's happening. A lot of the
right,
shaky cam is like during action scenes and it's a little shaky, but it's motivated by action. And like someone will open a door and you like the camera like shakes while they're opening the door kind of a thing. So it's a little immersive in that way, but it's not confusing really. So I think it was a nice balance with that. So I think the cinematography in this movie actually like is really good. And it's totally unique. There's really not really any other movies that look like this.
yeah. And there's a whole chain of movies that follow that try to, right? I mean, there's things like Chernobyl Diaries that is kind of has some infamy in found footage, even though it's not really a found footage movie, but and a lot of movies that kind of follow up, and even like I think you could even argue that found footage kind of um like I wonder about Wreck, right? Wreck is made 5 years after this and is a zombie found footage movie with some shaky cam and stuff. And I would say, there's some the cinematography here, I think, influences some of those things. But I think this is it's hard that this movie did it so well. Like
Yeah.
a lot of stuff that came after it just tried to recreate it. But like you said earlier, just using the digital cameras essentially is a cheap way to do it and not a intentional choice.
Yeah. Yep. I agree. And we've been talking about a lot of found footage and zombies recently. So to be honest, once we're done with this, I'll be happy to move on to anything else.
Yeah, that's right. Next week we have
Oh,
the Altman stuff, and then
yeah,
it's
that'll
like
be
we're
such a
never
nice change of
returning
pace.
to If Shane will have it anyway, we'll never return to found footage zombie stuff.
Oh, I mean, I'll watch a zombie movie, but found footage, Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, but this movie is not like in that
No.
style really at all. I think it's just the digital filmmaking
Right.
has that influence.
Um, but this movie is also, and I think this is very often true with zombie movies, is that this movie is like latent with themes, right? It's got the military abuse of power and abuse of women and all that stuff. But I think often zombie movies are I think one thing that really ties together zombie movies is that they're generally showing the fears and anxieties of the time. And it's fascinating that this movie was filming during 9/11. Um,
Mm,
Actually, the shot when they're toasting in the apartment building with the Christmas lights behind them and they're toasting on this really colorful drink. Apparently it was 9/11 that day and they all had the news and they were filming what they were talking about as being like one of the most kind of uplifting and like uniting pieces of the movie, and everyone was kind of like, it was really hard to do that day.
right.
But
Yeah, it's very like post 9/11 kind of a movie, which is interesting because it's obviously written and started making it before 9/11, but it just happened to be the right time of this sort of, I don't know, just the imagery at the beginning of civil unrest and sort of chaos around the world and stuff like that definitely felt like that was going on at that time. I don't know.
right.
So yeah, it definitely felt like it captured some of those like anxieties in culture in like 2002.
Yeah. And it's interesting because I think if you watch through, I've been doing this a lot lately. And it's funny because I really didn't think I liked zombies that much before like the past few months. But as I've been watching through a lot of different zombie movies, you can actually see like the societal fears and anxieties of the time as they change, right? And as they're represented in that change, with like Dawn of the Dead showing more like consumerism and stuff like that, Day of the Dead showing more militarism. And here we get a lot of that, we get that like the fears about military abuse of power and of societal collapse and all these things that were happening at the time, but then right in the middle of filming became very prevalent on everyone's mind, right?
Yeah. And obviously just the idea of rage being, obviously it's a literal virus in the movie, but it's also sort of a huge, I don't know, just a, I mean, it seems like it just gets worse and worse as time goes on and people getting more and more at each other's throats and uh I don't know, things getting society kind of becoming less harmonious, I guess, in some ways, or at least maybe our knowledge of the conflict is more and more like we know more about it through media and through, you know, there's cameras everywhere now, and all that stuff. Also, the media thrives on division and emphasizing that kind of stuff and making people angry to keep them watching or keep them clicking on their links and all
Right.
that. So yeah, but all that's kind of in this movie in the DNA.
Yeah. And I think it's very interesting to see that again just happen, like they're exhibiting these fears and anxieties that we often think of as post 9/11 fears and anxieties that from our perspective, I mean, we were so young when 9/11 happened, from our perspective are caused by 9/11. But then when you look back, I think this movie is a good indicator that really those fears and anxieties were happening really at the turn of the millennium before 9/11 even happened, and that just exemplified it quite a lot. But
Yeah, it's exacerbated
yeah.
the situation. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't know.
Uh,
I think,
yeah.
did you have much more to say about 28 Days Later? I think it's a pretty great movie.
What'd you give it?
You gave it 4 stars, 4 out of 5.
Nice. I also gave it 4 out of 5. I think
Nice.
I think it's a great movie. I think cinematography, it's dynamic and challenging and ambitious, but like does it well.
Yep.
Um, yeah.
Yeah, this is uh it's up there with one of my favorite Danny Boyle. I haven't seen all of Danny Boyle's movies, but I Train Spotting is definitely my number one, and Shallow Grave is pretty awesome. So I would have to rewatch Shallow Grave to be honest to see if I'd put it above 28 Days Later. But this is definitely in that upper echelon of movies he's made, and it's pretty interesting in Alex Garland's you know, filmography now. Obviously, I think this is the first screenplay he wrote that was made into a movie. The Beach is based on a novel that he wrote, but this is like one of his first screenplays, or maybe his first screenplay. Uh, and yeah, it's kind of a lot of themes that he is always into with military sci-fi things, kind of how awful humans can be to each other.
Yeah.
Yeah, it definitely makes sense. And probably not my favorite Alex Garland movie either, but still really, really great one.
Yeah. And I've got the rating recap here real quick.
Nice.
with a 7.5 out of 10 on IMDb, an 87% on Rotten Tomatoes, 85% audience score, and 3.8 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So all pretty good, and averaging out to 8.075 out of 10. So right around 8.1, which is, I mean, that's like 4 stars, right? In our 4 out of 5 thing. So
Makes
uh,
sense.
not that we always have to be right on the spot, but we are kind of right on the spot for this movie. So
Yeah, now we move on. I mean, hopefully we don't talk as much about 28 weeks later. It's
no, we talked a lot for that first one for a reason, I think.
yeah. We'll also be talking about 28 weeks later. It's written by like four people. Yeah, not I think Garland and Boyle are like executive producers on it, but that's pretty much it. Um, yeah, and it does have Robert Carlyle in it as the main character from Begbie from Trainspotting. So there's sort of that Danny Boyle connection. Um, but directed by Juan Carlos Fresnadillo, Spanish director. Uh, and yeah, basically, it has a pretty iconic opening scene, I think,
Yeah.
of Robert Carlyle and his wife, and then there's an older couple, and there's a young guy and a young woman. They're all in this cottage, um, and it's 28 weeks later. They're hiding out from zombies. Well, actually, it's not 28 weeks later yet. And then we
It's
get
like 28 days later, I think.
yeah,
I
it's
think this is
closer to
maybe,
that.
yeah. I
But
think, yeah, yeah.
yeah, so a kid runs up. He's like, "Let me in, let me in." They let him in. A bunch of zombies follow him. Robert Carlyle pretty much leaves his wife to die. He doesn't. He makes the selfish move and basically closes the door on her and the kids so that they can be killed by a zombie or turned into zombies. He runs away, and he also basically gets another guy killed. The guy who's untying the boat, he basically gets him killed.
Yeah, because he
Uh,
starts the boat without the guy in it. And then the guy
yeah,
tries to jump in and misses.
yes, yeah,
Oh my
yeah.
God. Yeah.
Yeah, so this guy's like a cowardly scumbag, which is kind of an interesting character to have as your main character in a movie. I kind of like the idea of it. Of because I mean, if you think in a zombie apocalypse scenario, people like this probably have a bit higher chance of survival than people who have sort of are going to do the noble thing and try to save. Like, if he did try to save his wife and the kid, he probably would have died
Oh
realistically,
yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So. But yeah, this is a pretty like cool opening scene. I think this is kind of the main thing people remember from this movie. Is this cool opening scene?
Which is funny because it's so different than the rest of the movie.
Yeah,
Even in like in terms of its cinematography, I think it's really well shot here. You get the iconic soundtrack of the first movie here when he's running away from the house.
yep.
Um what's the name of that song?
Oh man, I looked it up and now
Yeah,
I
whatever. It's
don't
like
have it.
the I have it somewhere here, but the iconic theme song essentially of the movie.
It's called "In the House" in a Heartbeat by
In a
John
heart.
Murphy.
All right,
Uh,
yeah. But yeah, and that tells you right away that John Murphy is back, right? And this opening sequence kind of feels like the first movie in a way. This feels
yeah,
like, there's that moral dilemma of like, do you save the people or do you run? Right. And yeah. And then we get another like descriptive subtitle of 28 weeks later. But
well,
actually
yeah,
before that, we get like the timeline thing. This is kind of weird.
yeah. It tells us like in 5 weeks after, 5 weeks later, the infected have died of starvation, which is we saw kind of at the end of the first movie that the infected were starving out. And then 11 weeks later, an American led force enters London. 18 weeks later, mainland Britain is declared free from the virus. 24 weeks later, reconstruction begins. 20 and then 28 weeks later, the movie starts. So yeah, it's kind of I think this may have been like kind of a fatal flaw of the movie of solving the virus before the movie starts. And then we're starting from a society trying to repopulate Great Britain.
Yeah, it's a very interesting perspective. Uh, I can't think of another like zombie movie that starts at the end of an apocalypse. You
Yeah, and then these dumb fucking kids who restart the apocalypse, these goddamn idiots. And all, I mean, there's just a lot of issues with this movie. I'm gonna jump right to it. This is the kids leave the island, which is stupid anyway. Jeremy Renner calls them pups, which was kind of
Yeah,
annoying, just stupid, dumb movie
yeah,
dialogue. Anyway, and then they find their mom at their house, and she's infected, but she's not, doesn't have rage, so she's sort of a carrier. So they bring her back to the safety zone. Probably bad idea, but I get it. You can lock her
yeah.
in a room.
Well, I don't think they know that she's infected yet. They're going to do the blood test. They don't.
Right.
So they just think that she's a
But they're
survivor.
going to do tests on her and all that
Yeah,
stuff. So, but after they know that she's a carrier of the virus, the virus that nearly wiped out humanity, that destroyed this entire island. How many millions of people died because of this virus? This is the only person on Earth with the virus right now. They leave her alone in a room. There's not a single guard. There's no one there. It's the dumbest thing I've ever seen in my life. So Robert Carlyle, apparently he has a pass. He has a pass to go everywhere. He has a.
yeah,
I don't know why. He has a pass that goes everywhere,
yeah.
and
They just let him into the. Yeah, that's crazy.
he
Able to get
swipes it.
so. Yeah. Oh my god, this is so.
Really dumb, really dumb. And he swipes it, and he goes in and he kisses his wife, and so he gets infected. And now this is where it's even bigger cop out. He's infected. He's rageful. He actually kills his wife because he has the rage. And then it just cuts, and he's in like a parking garage killing more people and spreading the infection. How did he get out? We've already established that these zombies are like not thinking. They're like it's just animalistic, just like pure rage. Did he bust through the like bulletproof glass? Did he use his card to swipe out of the room? You'd think the door would be locked. Shouldn't he be locked? But they don't even show you anything. They just cut and he's just magically outside the room. I was like, this whole movie is like you like restarting the apocalypse is pretty much the most crucial plot element of this movie, and they completely fuck it up. None
Yeah.
of it makes any sense. It's so stupid and just poorly done. It was terrible.
Right. Yeah. The idea here of starting a zombie apocalypse movie at the end of an apocalypse is actually an interesting idea, right? And there's
Yeah.
some cool stuff that you could do of like the rebuilding process, and it
Yeah.
kind of reminds me of like, I could imagine kind of like a. I know this isn't really the end of an apocalypse. Did you ever see District 9?
Yeah.
It's not really the end of an apocalypse in that movie, but like I could see something like that where you're like trying to rebuild a society. And uh and there's like there could be some cool stuff, but it just throws all that away like pretty much right away because it doesn't actually have a meaningful or interesting method of reinitiating the virus.
Yeah.
um this movie, a lot of this movie and this part particularly feels like if you just turned your brain off a little bit, and you weren't thinking, there's some like action in this movie, and like there's some bigger actors, and the acting is good at times
I
sometimes.
mean, yeah. Sorry.
No, you're good. Yeah. And so I'm like, I don't know, if you like turn your brain off, you could enjoy a lot about this movie, but if you're like trying to think much about it, like there's so many fatal flaws of the plot and the writing and stuff that hurts it too much.
Yeah. And with the action, the shaky cam is absolutely
Oh,
brutal in this movie. It's
yeah.
really bad. So much of it. There are many shots of just the camera shaking at nothing for no reason, and it's just shaking around just to shake. It's very bad. Um, but yeah, this does have like quite a crazy stacked cast. There's Robert
Yeah.
Carlyle, Jeremy Renner, Rose Byrne, Imogen Poots.
Yeah.
The Poots is back. And also Idris Elba is in this, like just in the background. Like he barely even like does anything in the movie.
Right.
And basically none of the characters are interesting except Robert Carlyle's character, I guess. Yeah, mostly these big names are kind of, well, I don't know. They weren't huge names at the time. They kind of became bigger names after, I guess.
Right.
But I don't think they're given that much to do. I don't
Yeah.
know.
And they also weren't as unknown as like Killian Murphy in the first one. Like he went on to become a huge actor, but I mean he became Oppenheimer. That's pretty cool. But
Yeah.
but at the time, I mean he was not a very prominent actor. And in this, I think that many of the cast probably have done a few other things, but I don't know.
Yeah. But yeah, I mean, this movie, I mean, the cinematography, clearly they had the technology, I don't know, the cameras that they chose to use are more clear and higher quality than in the original movie, but the cinematography is so much worse. Like
Yeah.
there aren't really any nice compositions. Like 28 Days Later has so many iconic shots, and I don't know, it just feels so assured in what they're doing, whereas this one feels kind of all over the place. The editing is kind of unnecessarily choppy, and there aren't any nice shots, basically. It's all very
Yeah.
bland.
And all the nice shots are like just, if they're not even nice shots, I shouldn't say that, but there's a lot of shots that in theory could have been nice shots, but that are like just kind of thrown in with like CG smoke or CG fire or something. And like,
Yeah. Yeah,
and
the CG in this is pretty bad.
yeah. And I mean, it's not like the worst CG, I guess, for 2007, but like, uh, remember the first movie? Like, come on. I don't know.
Sometimes less is more.
Right. And I have a hard time imagining that well, I mean, the thing is, they were given so much money to make the movie, right? And the first one did so well, and then this is what. And also, I mean, it doesn't help that you have four actors. Sorry, four writers making the movie. That's never a good sign. Um,
Yeah. Yeah, never a good sign. But I mean, some of the issues, especially with that, I mean, that scene that just obviously I kind of had an aneurysm over just 5 minutes ago. Uh, uh, you'd think you could solve it like if you made Robert Carlyle like in the military, maybe, or something like that.
yeah, but you
Or
have four writers, and none of them thought of, hey, maybe we should change this a little bit.
yeah, do they establish what his job is? Because he mentions like, oh, I can go anywhere. I run this place or something. He says to his kids, but it's kind of like joking. But
Yeah,
but
don't they?
I don't
I
remember what
think they like
his job
joke.
is.
I think maybe the kids were joking, but I thought someone said something about like a janitor at one point.
No, he can't. No
No,
way.
I
I
don't
don't know.
know. I
Maybe
forget.
he could be the
Yeah.
janitor. And apparently the janitor has access to any room in the entire
Hey,
building.
every room's got trash, you know?
Oh my gosh. Maybe he is a janitor. You could be right. But
But
like I like the idea of following this character who has made this horrible decision or like selfish decision that he feels ashamed of, and like he lies to his kids about it, and then the wife coming back and actually not being dead, and he's kind of like, ah, shit, the what's the something's come home to roost, there's a saying, whatever, but the chickens have come home to roost or something. Roosters, turkeys roosting, something's roosting anyway.
yeah, whatever.
Yeah, yeah. It's gonna come back to bite him, you know. And that's all interesting ideas, but there's just so many. Oh man, it's just the execution just was not there for me.
Yeah. Um, Speaking of the execution, uh, the infection gets crazy, and then the military is just like pretty quickly is like they. I wrote down they said abandon selective firing. We can't lose control, and this very much feels like um well, I don't know, whatever. Jeremy Renner and all the other snipers just start shooting people. And Jeremy Renner kind of is the most conflicted, of course.
Hmm.
That's the whole point.
Yeah,
Um, but it's pretty crazy.
they're just like kill everyone.
And they just do it.
Hmm.
Um, and then we get told that, you know, the steps were step one, kill the infected. Step two, containment. Then, if containment fails, step three, exterminate. And it's like, that's all right, whatever. I don't know, whatever. Suspension of disbelief, I guess, but kind of crazy.
I find that more believable than Robert Carlyle's zombie getting out of the room. To be
Well,
honest,
yeah, that too. But
I
like,
could believe, because honestly, what if the infection breaks out on this little island? Just
but
you got to kill everyone.
why did you put people back on the island then?
Yeah, that's the
If that
problem.
was
Yeah,
if your step was like, well, we might have to kill everyone. It's like maybe maybe you don't need
maybe
to
we
put them
should.
back yet.
Yeah, maybe it's a little too early to be repopulating the island.
Yeah. If like your third, like the third option, right? You're like, kill the infected. Okay, if that doesn't work, contain them. And if that doesn't work, just kill everyone. Like if that's your third step, I think you went too fast. You know, it's like
I guess so. Well, he didn't anticipate the mom being a carrier, I guess.
Yeah. Or kids leaving the fucking place.
That
Crazy.
was yeah, just dumb.
But they decide, so now Jeremy Renner is running around with the kids and a couple other people, and most of the people are dying. And then they decide to firebomb the city. It's
Yeah.
a cool idea.
Yep. Yeah. The firebomb the city. I find all this stuff not that unbelievable, to be honest.
Really?
Yeah. If
I
there was a zombie apocalypse and it started an infection, you could just have it all right here. Just fucking nuke it.
Yeah, you're not even gonna care about yeah, whatever. I think the
They
issue
nuked
is,
the U.S. government nuked Japan less than
yeah,
100 years ago. Killed how many 200,000 civilians or whatever?
I guess
What's 15,000 civilians in a zombie apocalypse? They're gonna
yeah,
turn into zombies anyway.
yeah, you're probably right,
Not that
but
it's the right thing to do, but I'm just
right,
saying I believe that it would could be done.
you're probably right. It is very funny that this is like an American group making these decisions to put people back into this place, and then making the decision to just kill them all.
Yeah.
That's what happens
Like
here. It's Americans just eviscerating.
yeah, I think this is very post Iraq War.
Yeah.
Again, like the American military is not seen in a good light. I don't know if this is like before like Abu Ghraib and all that stuff was like revealed. Um, but yeah, clearly in the eyes of anyone who's not like a jingoistic American, the American military was doing a lot of horrific things at this time. So it makes sense that the American military is kind of portrayed as a very bad force uh, in this movie, I think.
Yeah, definitely. Because they firebomb, then they use nerve gas, and then they flamethrower Doyle alive. Um,
Yeah, that was crazy.
Also, a cool callback, though, I will say, the flaming person to the Molotov cocktail in the first movie. I don't know if
Yeah.
it was an intentional callback or not, but
Yeah,
I
it
thought,
reminded me of that for sure. Yeah. And
and
also
then
another callback to the first movie I thought was
yeah,
when Robert Carlyle gets turned into a zombie, he gouges his wife's eyes
yes,
out, which
yeah,
maybe yeah. Anyway.
and then a helicopter is just trying to shoot down a car and can't do it, which is kind of funny. You're like a multi-million-dollar piece of technology with guns on it, and you can't shoot a single slow-moving car. That's whatever.
And then do you remember when the helicopter guy like uses the blades to chop all the zombies?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
Kind of silly, but I don't know. It was
yeah.
something that happened. It was kind of bad CGI, but
Again, it was
yeah.
another one that was like, yeah, it was cool. Like, yeah,
It's just so different from the first one. Like it's a
right.
lot sillier and I don't know. Eh, whatever.
And yeah, a lot like this one's also, there's no like fun moments in this one of like raiding a grocery store. This one's just dark the whole time. Like the whole movie is
Yeah.
just kill, like pretty much right away. It's like, oh, kids do something stupid. Infection starts again. We watch the dad gouge out the mom's eyes, and
Yep.
then we just watch our like the American military just start killing indiscriminately.
Yeah. Murdering innocent people all over the place. And then yeah, Jeremy Renner gets lit on fire, the most brutal, horrific death you could ever imagine.
The one guy
Uh
that was in the military that was trying to help gets
yes.
torched. Yeah,
Yeah,
crazy.
the movie's actually so yeah, you're right because there aren't
It's,
any moments
there's,
of anything nice happening at all.
there's nothing fun about this movie.
No.
Other than I guess if you yeah, like the helicopter blades like mowing down the zombie heads was, I get, like, yeah, like you can cheer on that, but then also there's that one survivor that gets flung off and chopped into there too.
Oh, oh yeah, yeah. The guy that's hanging onto the
Yeah.
onto the helicopter. Yeah,
So I don't know, whatever. But luckily, somehow the kids are alive and they have the gun, and there's a night vision sequence that sucks. Um,
yeah. I thought you might find the night vision sequence interesting because it's maybe a little bit found footage and that we have the POV shots from. I think it's Imogen Poots is like using the sniper night vision to like see in the subway tunnels.
Yeah, I kind of did find it interesting. It is 2007, so it's like the same year that Rec and Paranormal Activity were made, both kind of using night vision in that same style or same idea. Um, but I also just didn't really enjoy it. It was like they were
Kind of out of
like
place.
yeah, and it was so annoying too because it was like, okay, you could only see like two, like a meter in front of you. So they were like, stop, 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 stop. And then it's like, oh, there was a dead body. Like, move around the dead body, and that's it. And it's like it could have been solved if like everyone could see where they were going or something. I don't know, but it was just too annoying. I didn't like
Yeah.
it.
Yeah, that's fair. Yeah, a lot of this movie is like interesting ideas that are not well executed, I think.
Yeah, and I think this is a good example of that, right? It's like I think there is some cool. There's definitely cool night vision stuff you can do in a tunnel, even with just one person being able to see and having to guide everyone. But yelling stop every 2 minutes is not the way to do it. But
Yeah, that's fair.
and then somehow the dad shows up again.
Yeah, yeah, he finds him somehow.
What the fuck?
Yeah, and then Poots has to shoot the dad.
Yeah, after he bites the other kid and the other kid's fine. So he,
Oh,
I think it's to
oh,
show that he's infected but not symptomatic or whatever, like the mom.
oh, the little kid with the Real Madrid jersey.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then they make it back to the stadium and they fly away and then
Yeah, Wembley is there's like all the long grass at Wembley, which is kind of cool, I guess. It's kind of some bad CGI here too. A lot of
yeah.
bad CGI in the movie, to be honest.
Yeah. Again, just a lot of like turns away from stuff that was really impactful and cool in the first one. And I mean this happens a lot with sequels, so I don't know why I'm surprised, but
Yeah, it's funny because I remember liking this movie because
yeah, same.
I obviously know that this has a far worse reputation than 28 Days Later. But whenever I first watched these two movies back in it was probably like 10 years ago at this point, I remember being like, yeah, it's not as good as the first one, but it's a good, solid zombie movie. And now I watched it, I was like, oh yeah, this is not a good movie at all. It's really bad shaky cam, some pretty poor writing, which makes sense when you have four different writers, trying to figure things out. That probably tends to happen. And yeah, it seems like a pretty significant drop in quality from the first one.
Yeah. I also remember liking this one, and I think um I don't know. I mean, I think there is a world where you can like this movie. I mean, anyone can like this movie. That's fine. But like, there is a world where I could still like this movie if I just go in with a different mindset or like, just like throw it on in like a zombie marathon or something. Like, sure, if, but
There's other. The thing is, it's not fun.
right, that's the
If a movie's not very well made, but it's fun and it's cheesy and whatever, then you can still get the enjoyment out of it. But if it's really, really bleak and it's not very well made, you're pretty much not offering anything for an audience.
yeah. I think that's totally right, and that's pretty much what this movie feels like. So, um, I don't know what you know high school me was thinking, but
Yeah, I mean, do we do ratings for 28 weeks later? Do we have that much more to say? I don't know.
yeah, no, I think I don't. So this is funny because I gave it 2.5 stars, but I'm lowering it after we talked.
Oh.
Sometimes I don't rate until after we talk about it, just in case. But I'm just dropping this straight down to 2 stars.
Hey, I also gave it 2 stars. Look at this. We completely agreed on both the movies.
Nice. Well, the recap kind of surprised me. It's a 6.9 out of 10 on IMDb,
Nice.
72% Rotten Tomatoes, 66% audience score, and a 3.1 out of 5 on Letterboxd. So it people like it a bit more than we do, but it gives it an average of 6.725. So 6.7 ish out of 10. So that's, I mean, yeah, I think that's reasonable, but it's a
I
little
get it.
high.
And I think I watched both these movies the same day.
Right.
So to watch this within like I watched the first one and then watched this maybe a couple hours later, it definitely emphasized that like just the comparison makes it so much worse, I think.
Right. I agree. And I did kind of a similar thing. I actually watched the first one like a couple days ago. And then I watched the first, I was going to like sit down and watch this one, but then I watched the first one with commentary instead, just to, I don't know. And then I eventually watched this one this morning. So like fresh off the ironing press.
Sure.
That's an
Fresh,
expression.
yeah. Oh,
Um,
we need to figure out our expressions before we
I'm
start
very
using
bad at expressions, but
them.
there's so before we
Ugh.
close off, there is a 28 seconds later. That's like a promotional piece for 28 weeks later that I watched. It's like 3.5 minutes. You can find it on YouTube, but you don't really have to because it's pretty bad. Um, it came out the same year as 28 weeks later, 2007, and it just follows like a disoriented soldier in a gas mask at maybe a hazmat facility or something. There's a couple shots from inside of his mask, which is kind of cool. So you see like you see through his eyes, I guess. But that's pretty much the only interesting thing. He has to kill a few infected. He gets infected and dies. There's like really no story. There's nothing interesting. It's like 3 minutes though. Like, what do you expect? I guess. But I kind of hope they revisit the idea of 28 seconds later. I think there's some cool stuff you could do, like the moment that it happens, right? Like what happened after they left that facility in the first movie, right? Um, but I
Eh,
certainly don't know if I really
nah,
recommend
I
your.
think we just go to 28 years later. We don't need to see this prequel stuff. The first one did it great. We
Yeah.
we saw what we needed to see. We went to 28 days later. I think I'm excited for 28 years later because there's such a big gap that there's enough time to reset from 28 weeks later, and they can kind of do whatever they want. Also, it's Danny Boyle and Alex Garland teaming up again, so that it seems like a very good sign.
Yes, I'm also very excited for 28 years later, and I think the long distance or the long time gap will be helpful. I also just think the marketing for the movie has been really on point so far. The teaser
Hmm.
trailer is like so creepy and atmospheric, and it sells me right away. That's all I need
Yeah.
to see, you know?
Yeah, and I believe it's going to be like part of a trilogy of 28 years later movies. I think the second one is directed by Nia DaCosta, who did
Oh,
the Candyman remake.
yeah.
Um, but yeah, I'm definitely curious about this upcoming trilogy, and I have high hopes for it.
Yeah. And my understanding for the trilogy is, unlike, I think there was some speculation at first that it was going to be like different time series, right? Like years, then months, and then whatever. But I think my understanding is that it's just going to be all in the same time period essentially, and just this is 28 years after part one,
Yeah,
part two, part three, kind of.
yeah, I think that's what they're doing, which is cool.
Yeah, we're
I
excited.
mean, that's kind of what they have to do. You can't really do what 28 decades later, we do sci-fi. Like you eventually you're gonna run out of time, denominations of time.
Right. Yeah, and also if you like at some point, does it really make sense to revisit something that happened 28 decades ago? Like how much has what chance is there of that thing coming back? Like it's not like there's still one person with the infection left somewhere. You know, if you got
Yeah,
rid of it, you got rid of it.
it's interesting what because they established the uh the infected starving. So
Right.
like what is it that I assume they're gonna talk about this in the movie? Like what is it that they eat? Do they need to eat human flesh? Do they just need to eat food, but they're so dumb they can't figure it out so that you know what I mean? Like maybe, I mean, over 28 years, maybe the infected are uh gonna be smarter or develop that way. Or maybe it's been okay for a while and then someone's gonna bring back the virus. Some mad
That's
scientist or
interesting.
something. I don't know.
I have a theory. Do you want to hear a theory?
Sure.
It's my thought is that what this is all happening in more rural areas, and it's because the zombies can eat like deer and they can eat stuff in the woods or whatever, right? They can find a rabbit and eat it, right? But the urban areas, and I think the urban areas in these movies are going to be like zombieless, right? I don't know if they'll have people in them because who knows, but like I think that the zombies there will have all starved out, right? So
Mm.
there's no, they can't open cans or whatever. But
They could eat rats. There's a lot of rats in the first one.
oh, true, that's true. But so that's my thought is maybe they actually can eat animals and stuff. They just in London, it's not like there's like deer running around or whatever, right? I don't know.
Right.
I don't
I
really know.
I I could see that. That makes sense. It doesn't seem like it's someone who brings back the virus. It seems like it's a post-apocalyptic society that has sort of is create, new societies have been created, sort of like almost like Beyond Thunderdome. What's the name of the city in there?
Uh,
Is it
yes.
Oil Town or something like that?
Oh yeah, I think it is.
Is it Oil where they have the Thunderdome and they've created their own society in the post-apocalyptic world? I'm kind of
Also,
hoping for something like that.
best Ben Max movie.
No, it's not. No,
Yeah,
it's
it
not.
is. Yeah,
Don't
top of
listen
the
to
list.
It's better than the first one, but it's not. It's not. That's insane. That's insane. Road
Good same
Warrior
here.
is the best. Number two, Mad Max 2, Road Warrior is the best.
Anyways, uh,
Maybe eventually we'll do some. Hey, we could do a Mad Max tier list. That would be controversial because we would just thoroughly
yeah,
disagree on everything, probably.
yeah, that'd be tough.
It is good
But
though. Beyond Thunderdome is underrated, I think, because it gets a lot of hate, but it's a good movie.
yeah, but in the meantime, you guys know how to find us. Our letterbox is the best place to reach us because we have our links to everything else on there. So Mind Your Movies podcast, and we've got our Instagram, we've got our Blue Sky, we've got our personal letterbox, and all of our streaming sites. So you know where to, you know, follow and give 5 stars and comment or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
That's it.
Thanks, thank you for listening, and don't forget to mind your movies.